Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. This is episode 2 of my Signs in the Heavens playlist. And in this video, we're going to talk about something I think was pretty significant that happened over Israel in early 2023. There was a meteor that exploded over northern Israel. And the timing is interesting. The area affected is interesting. The events that preceded and followed this event are interesting, and we're going to go over all of that. So here on X, you can see a video of this meteor. As far as I know, it's the only video of it. There is another image of it, a picture that you can see right here. Okay. So we're going to start with Israel 365 and then go over to Jerusalem Post and then go from there. Meteor explosion over northern Israel has people looking to the heavens. The date of this article is April 16th, 2023, but the meteor happened a day before on the 15th. A meteor exploded over northern Israel in an astronomical event that was heard all over the country. Okay, so that's the first interesting thing. It's already interesting that you have this happening over Israel, but this is an event that was heard throughout the entire nation, and it happened on Saturday. Saturday in Judaism is the Sabbath day. So a loud event heard throughout the entire country on the Sabbath. At around 5:16 p.m., the airburst was reported by the Israeli Astronomical Association. The IAA described it as a bolide, meaning an exceptionally bright meteor. The light is caused by the ionized atmosphere heated up by the meteor's impact. Quote, meteors are observed every night, but seeing one from an inhabited place in daylight and over Israel is very rare. Eagle Pat L., a member of the International Astronomical Union, said about the event. Really quick, think about this. Let's look at Google Earth and let's zoom out. There's Israel. Israel is not very large, geographically speaking. So it's not likely that you would see a meteor over Israel. Now, it's happened in the past, obviously, but it's rare because it's such a small area. So if we were talking about Russia, for example, Russia is a much larger country, and the chances are greater that somewhere in the country you'll see a meteor, rather than a tiny, tiny, tiny little country like Israel. This is part of what makes it rare. Okay. And I don't have the exact location of where it occurred, just generally speaking in northern Israel. So I put this place mark right here for this meteor explosion. All right, let's continue. Continuing with the quote, no debris has been found, and it is likely nothing survived the trip to the ground, end quote. Dr. David Polishuk, an asteroid expert at the Weizmann Institute of Science, told the Jerusalem Post that the meteor was likely 1 meter in diameter based on his own observations of images and video taken. Quote, it's larger than a common meteor, but smaller compared to the Chelyabinsk event, end quote, Polishuk told the Jerusalem Post. I'm going to cover this in another video because this was another pretty big sign in the heavens, I think. Chelyabinsk, Russia. If you go to my recommended videos playlist, I have a video on there that has a compilation of that explosion. And that explosion had the explosive yield of a nuclear bomb. It happened in, I think it was 2013. So check out that video. But I'll do a video about that in the future. Okay, so let's go back to the map and let's think about this a little bit. When I first read this story earlier this year, what stuck out is that it was northern Israel. Because if you're familiar with the Bible and you're familiar with end days prophecies, you know that northern Israel is where Megiddo is, or the site of the future battle of Armageddon. And I have the place mark for Megiddo right here, this little blue place mark. So when you have a rare daytime meteor that explodes on Shabbat, and it's heard across the entire country, and it's over, roughly over Megiddo, that may not be a good sign. Or you could look at it as a good sign because it means that potentially the second coming is soon. But that's what happened. And it's interesting to note that here we are half a year later, because this was in April, and then 6 months later in October, that's when the Hamas-Israel war began. So was this a foreshadowing, a sign, a warning of that war? Potentially. We're going to look at some more details. Let's move on to the I was going to say the New Jerusalem Post. We'll have that someday. The Jerusalem Post. Meteor explodes in Israel's atmosphere, Israeli Astronomical Association says. A meteor exploded in the atmosphere above northern Israel on Saturday, with the resulting airburst being audible throughout the country, according to the Israeli Astronomical Association and corroborated by local experts. According to Shlomi Ini of the association's Meteor Observation Group, the meteor wasn't something the observers saw coming, and all observations were wholly unplanned. Well, that's how you could also describe the attack on October 7th, where Hamas sent fighters into southern Israel, and somehow or another, Israeli intelligence didn't see it coming, and there's like a big controversy over that. So you have this meteor observation group who I suppose they observe meteors and are aware, maybe most of the time, I don't know, when meteors are incoming, but they didn't see this one coming. It was wholly unplanned, quote unquote. Very interesting. Okay, so let's take a look at the month of April of 2023. And that was a very active month as far as things happening in space, in the heavens, in the sky. So first to note, before we go over those, is that April 26th on the Hebrew calendar, I'm not talking about the Gregorian calendar, I'm talking about the Hebrew calendar, was Israel's 75th birthday. And that's when it was celebrated in Israel, on April 26th, because of the Hebrew calendar. So Israel being 75 years old means that it's halfway through its 8th decade. And if you've watched my channel for a while, we've talked about the curse of the 8th decade. If you don't know what that is, I'll bring you up to speed. So this is on Mizrahi World Movement, and the article is called The Curse of the 8th Decade. We have much to learn from history. Twice before, there existed here, in the land of Israel, sovereign Jewish kingdoms, and the beginning of the collapse of both kingdoms began in the 8th decade of their existence. The first Jewish state, founded by King David, accomplished phenomenal achievements and survived united, both the north and the south, united for 80 years. In the 81st year, due to internal conflicts, the kingdom of the house of David disintegrated into the separate kingdoms of Yehuda and Israel. And so began its fall. In the process, we lost millions of our brothers, the members of the 10 tribes, who, according to Rabbi Akiva, will not return in the future. The second Jewish state was the Hasmonean kingdom during the Second Temple era. It existed for 77 years as a united and sovereign kingdom. In the 8th decade of its life, the kingdom was torn apart by infighting, which led the representatives of the two camps claiming the crown to approach Pompey in Syria, each one begging him to agree to make them vassals of Rome. And so the sovereign Hasmonean state became a degraded protectorate state of Rome, devoid of proud Jewish sovereignty. So here we have this meteor that happened on the 15th of April, just 11 days before Israel's 75th birthday. And Israel's halfway through its 8th decade. And now, later in the year, there's this war where, at the moment, we don't know where it's going to lead, but it stands out from all other wars. It could be existential if it escalates. So that's very interesting. Now, let's look at the other things that happened in April. I don't have an exact date for this, but just sometime in April, the star Betelgeuse, which is the right shoulder of the constellation Orion, which is actually the last video that I did. I would encourage you to watch that if you haven't already. It's a very interesting star. But Betelgeuse, of all stars, started to shine 150% its usual brightness, which moved it from the 10th brightest star in the sky to the 7th brightest star in the sky. Both of those numbers, 7 and 10, are numbers of perfection and completion. 10 in the mathematical sense, 7 in the sense of creation. And then its bright to dim cycle became twice as fast as usual. On April 10th, there was this thing called what I call a lifeboat, that's short for luminous fast blue optical transient, was discovered, and it was the 7th so far. So we got another 7 right there. Then on the 15th, you had the meteor over Israel that we're talking about. On the 20th of April, there was a rare hybrid eclipse over Southeast Asia, as well as Australia, the Pacific, Indian Ocean, and Antarctica. Only the 7th this century. And then I think I'll point this out too. Just immediately after April, on the 3rd of May, there was the most powerful solar flare ever recorded in the star system V1355 Orionis. So not from our own sun, it was from another star, but it's the most powerful flare ever recorded. So it was a very active month and period of time, and very interesting numbers. But that's not all. Let's continue. Okay, so there was this news that we were following very closely when this was happening. Israeli forces carry out violent raid at Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay, what was that about? Let's go over to NBC News. The date of this article is April 4th. Okay, Jerusalem. Israeli police stormed into the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem's Old City early Wednesday, firing stun grenades at the Palestinian youths who hurled firecrackers at them in a burst of violence during a sensitive holiday season. Okay, so let's go really quick to the map. Let's zoom in on Jerusalem. I'm sure most of you already know the way that the Temple Mount is laid out. A lot of people, I think, that don't know too much about it, they probably think that the most important site is the Dome of the Rock because it's the most prominent. It has the gold dome. That's where the rock is. But actually, it's this mosque right here, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay, this is where the clashes took place. All right, back to the article. Palestinian militants in Gaza responded with rocket fire on southern Israel, prompting repeated Israeli airstrikes. The fighting, coming as Muslims mark the holiday month of Ramadan and Jews prepare to begin the Passover festival on Wednesday evening, raised fears of a wider conflagration. So the way that it worked out for 2023 is Ramadan, according to this website, according to Muslim Aid, it went from the 22nd of March until the 21st of April. So let's go to hebcal.com, and I've color-coded the days. So in red, you have Ramadan, okay, from the 22nd up here down to the 21st of April. But you can also see that you have Pesach, or the week of Passover, that overlapped. Okay, that's not always the case because both the Muslim calendar and the Hebrew calendar, they're lunar calendars, and so they shift and they're not like in sync with each other. So you had Passover going on at the same time as Ramadan. Anytime that happens, there's usually tension because people want to go to the Temple Mount, and there's contention and confrontation usually. So it's something that happens. But this year, it led to something different. It helped lead to this war that we're going through right now. There's many reasons, according to Hamas and others, why the war started, but among those reasons was what happened in April. And if you'll remember, what Hamas is calling this war is Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, or Al-Aqsa Storm. Again, referring to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, right? Because it was kind of like, it's almost like they were doing like a rallying call to mobilize the rest of, the Muslim countries and groups to join in and to destroy Israel. They were calling for the destruction of Israel. But it seems like this time they were actually serious about it. So this happened the same month that the meteor hit. In fact, if you look over here on the 15th, this happened during Ramadan. Happened just a couple days after Passover ended, and it happened on the Sabbath. And you'll also notice that it was 2 weeks after General Conference. General Conference in April 2023 was on the 1st and the 2nd. So that's why I have those in yellow. 2 weeks later, and a couple days after Passover and during Ramadan, on the Jewish Sabbath, you have this meteor that explodes over northern Israel. 6 months later, again, northern Israel, where Megiddo is, and 6 months later, you have this very unusual surprise war that broke out. Okay, so let's go back to the article. The Palestinian Red Crescent said that 50 people were injured. Separately, the Israeli military said 1 soldier was shot in the occupied West Bank. Since Ramadan began March 22nd, scores of Muslim worshippers have repeatedly tried to stay overnight in the mosque, a practice that is typically permitted only during the last 10 days of the month-long holiday. Israeli police have entered nightly to evict the worshippers, stirring tensions with young Palestinians who demand to pray at the holy site until dawn. After some 80,000 worshippers attended evening prayers at the mosque on Tuesday, hundreds of Palestinians barricaded themselves inside the mosque overnight to pray. Some said they were determined to stay the night to ensure religious Jews didn't carry out animal sacrifices at the site. By the way, that's something that we've covered too. It seems like every year, but even more so in recent years, there's groups that will pay people if they successfully sacrifice an animal on the Temple Mount. There's like cash rewards. And there's also, basically these kind of like zealot types that want to do that. And so that was stoking flames a bit. After they refused to leave, Israeli police moved into the mosque, descending on Palestinians with batons. Israeli police said several law-breaking youths and masked agitators brought fireworks, sticks, and stones into the mosque, chanting insults and locking the front doors. After many and prolonged attempts to get them out by talking to no avail, police forces were forced to enter the compound, police said, adding that 1 officer was injured in the leg, while some 350 Palestinians were arrested. Okay, so after these clashes at the Temple Mount and Al-Aqsa Mosque, there started to be all these rockets being fired from the Gaza Strip by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not by Hamas at that time. It was from Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and that was really escalating, and we really had our attention on that. Israel launched Operation Shield and Arrow, which ended that conflict and only lasted from the 9th of May until the 13th of May. Okay, now, that's pretty much all that I have to say about the meteor over northern Israel. But one last thing that I want to share is something that happened over northern Utah the year before, in August. Northern Utah saw its own meteor. It was a daytime meteor with a large boom. And the boom was heard all the way from southern Idaho down to Provo. Okay, and here, this is from National Weather Service, Salt Lake City. Bolstering the meteor theory for this morning's boom in Utah, the 2 reddish pixels shown over Davis and Morgan counties are from the GOES 17 lightning mapper, but not associated with evidence of thunderstorm activity in satellite or radar. Likely the meteor trail / flash. And later it was confirmed. This was the meteor. Okay, so it's not far from Salt Lake. It's north of Salt Lake. Here you can see Salt Lake County. Okay. So the thing about this, and there's a couple images and videos. This is from Snow Basin. You can see the meteor right there, a bright light in the sky. Here is another video. You can see it right here. It's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see it. It's from like a doorbell camera. Here's another one. This girl's outside, and then boom, it's right there. Let me replay it. It comes from right here. So this Utah meteor is interesting. I don't have all the articles up because I've done it so many times, but it seems to be associated with the angel Moroni dropping his trumpet in March of 2020. Okay, what happened was on March 18th, 2020, as the pandemic was starting to hit the United States and become widespread, there was an earthquake in Magna, Utah, which caused the trumpet of the angel Moroni on top of the Salt Lake Temple to fall. 2 days later, missionary work was changed to respond to the pandemic. And then a couple days after that, temples closed. So there was this great diminishing of the work of salvation and the spreading of the gospel. An angel drops his trumpet and things go quiet, both missionary work and temple work. Okay, a couple years go by. In April 2022, President Nelson makes a call for more missionaries, and they do in fact respond. And right now we're up to over 72,000 missionaries. Well, that was April 2022. It was in August 2022 that this meteor happened, which caused a loud boom over a wide area, again, from southern Idaho down to Provo, Utah. So it's like an opposite event from what happened with the angel Moroni. And they were on mirror dates. The angel Moroni dropped his trumpet on 3/18, March 18th, and then the large boom in Utah, which seems to correspond with the influx of missionaries, happened on 8/13, 3/18, 8/13. So that's really interesting. I don't think that these meteors are meaningless. I think that they are signs. They come at very interesting times, and I think we would do well to pay attention to these things. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.